Most of you are probably on our newsletter email list, and so you know my name better than I do. But I'm the executive director for UNCFSA. And do we have music on in the background? That's not my walk-up music. So can one of you all? Thank you very much. All right. Well, good evening and welcome to the UNC Alumni Free Speech Alliance's annual dinner. It's our 5th anniversary. You heard that right? You heard that right. We're 5 years old, and you know what 5-year-olds are like. Inquisitive, energetic, imaginative, and occasionally obstinate. And I think that describes us pretty well. Before getting into a recap of our work, I'd like to acknowledge some folks here tonight. First, we have a UNC trustee in attendance, Perrin Jones. Perrin, are you here? There we go. Perrin, thank you for all you do for the university. Second, we have many of the UNCFSA's board of directors. Would you all please stand? Thank you for all you do for our organization. And I'd like to thank our sponsors, especially our speaker sponsors, Ted Bratton, Alan Corey, Doug Monroe, and the Carolina Partnership for Reform, and our VIP reception and cocktail sponsors, Alan Corey, David Frost, J.C. Cohen, and Jim Griffith. A full list of all the sponsors are available at your table. This evening wouldn't be possible without you. And finally, not finally for the all remarks, but finally for the introduction, 2026 isn't just our anniversary, it's also the 250th anniversary of our Declaration of Independence. You may have seen we pulled some quotes from our founders when they talked about free speech. It was a big deal to them back then. The signers of our declaration were willing to risk their lives to preserve our freedoms. And every generation since then has had some who are willing to do the same. So if we have any veterans or current service members in attendance, would you please stand? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you all for defending our freedoms. I'd like to especially point out one in the corner over here, Kendall Williams, who is a UNC and UNC Law graduate, is a member of our board of directors, and currently serves in the Army Reserves. She just got back from a deployment. Thank you, Kendall. So, a half-decade ago, a handful of UNC alumni were alarmed by the turmoil they were seeing play out on college campuses across the country. So they banded together to ensure that their beloved UNC Chapel Hill avoided the errors of its peers by staying true to its motto, Lux Libertas, light and liberty, knowledge and freedom. Their mission, promote free speech, academic freedom, and viewpoint diversity at UNC. And their vision, a university that is an open forum for the balanced pursuit of truth and knowledge. Now, 5 years later, while many top universities in this country continue to be in turmoil, having lost their bearings and strayed from the university's purpose, UNC has chosen a different path, to teach students to be open-minded and critical of their own and others' beliefs so they can be successful in their careers and as citizens. And what do? We're a nonpartisan organization that engages with the university administration and governing bodies to promote our mission's principles, as we did just last week with a proposal to add a free speech statement to all UNC course syllabi. That would serve as a reminder to students that they can and should speak their minds in class. We also defend our mission's principles when they are threatened, such as this week, when a senior vice president improperly inserted himself into a campus controversy by threatening students who were exercising their free speech rights. That fight's not over yet. We are cheerleaders for successes, especially the many policies adopted by UNC to protect free speech and academic freedom. We bring relevant UNC and free speech news to over 35,000 alumni through our biweekly newsletter. And we host nationally recognized speakers who deliver perspectives that may not otherwise be part of the campus conversation. And you can see the list of luminaries in our flyer on your table. And finally, we support fellow traveler campus groups, such as the UNC Student Free Speech Alliance, which conducts campus debates on current events and collaborates on all our activities, and Heterodox Heels, a faculty association that works to advance open inquiry, viewpoint diversity, and constructive disagreement across higher education. And I need to pause here for a minute and tell you about Heterodox Heels co-chair Mark McNeely, who teaches at Keenan Flagler and will be retiring this summer. It's fair to say that no one on the UNC faculty has done more for the cause than Mark. He relentlessly and fearlessly took on the establishment with data and forceful arguments to move UNC's policies to embrace free speech and open inquiry. His persistence and determination changed this university for the better. It's been our pleasure to work with Mark, and more importantly, to be the recipient of his constructive support. Mark, can you join me on stage for a second? Mark, to honor you and your accomplishments, we are proud to present you with our Outstanding Leadership Award for service and dedication to freedom at UNC. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, as you know, UNC is blessed with some of the most engaged alumni when it comes to athletics, fanatic boosters who also aren't shy about expressing their opinions when things are off track. And UNCFSA believes that Carolina's alumni should be just as engaged when it comes to cheering the university on to national championship caliber academics. Its graduates deserve no less. To close, I want to leave you with words of wisdom from two of my favorite presidents. The first is from the founder of the second oldest public university, Thomas Jefferson, who, after declaring us free with the stroke of his pen, sounded this warning: the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. And that's the responsibility that we have assumed. And you, through your support, enable us to do so. And the second comes from my former boss, President Ronald Reagan, who cautioned that freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. Now, who prepares that next generation? Well, universities do. And our work on this flagship UNC campus helps us to ensure that the next generation won't be the last free one. If students here are steeped in the baptismal font of freedom, they will carry the spirit of liberty through their lives. And now it's my pleasure to introduce you to someone from that next generation who, I'm sure you will agree, gives us hope for the future. His name is Hunter Closty, and he will introduce our keynote speaker, Byron York. Hunter grew up in Chapel Hill and stuck around for college. He is the president of the UNC Student Free Speech Alliance and a former editor-in-chief of the Carolina Review, a student journal which for 3 decades has promoted a political philosophy of free thought and individual as, quote, an intelligent way of viewing the world. Hunter also works for us. For 2 years, he has helped organize all our events, and he curates and edits our biweekly newsletter. When he hasn't been engaged in the cause of freedom, Hunter has earned a dual major in economics and European studies, plus a minor in history, and he is graduating this spring at the end of his junior year. Yep, you heard that right. Just think what Hunter could have accomplished if he had stayed 4 years. With leaders like Hunter, I, for one, am pretty confident about our next generation. And fortunately, he wants to continue the cause by pursuing a career in journalism. Last summer, he earned a fellowship to work writing editorials for the New York Daily News, which had to have been a lot of fun. So it's quite fitting that Hunter, as a budding journalist, introduces Byron York as one of journalism's old guards. Please join me in welcoming, thanking, and regretfully bidding a fond farewell to Hunter Closty.
That's very kind. Thank you so much, Mark. You've been an excellent boss, so I really appreciate it. And AFSA is an incredible organization that does very important work and has made my time at UNC so rewarding, and so I thank everybody in this room for contributing to that effort. Really, it's really been amazing. Before I introduce Byron, I just want to say that we will have a question and answer session, and we will have runners around the room, so raise your hand if you have a question about anything he said, not just what he talks about in his speech, but anything relating to current events. It's my honor to introduce Byron York. He is the chief political correspondent, for the Washington Examiner and a Fox News contributor. He has covered the last 5 presidential administrations, as well as Congress and campaigns since the year 2000. He is the author of 2 books, The Vast Left-Wing Conspiracy, an account of progressive activism in the 2004 election, and Obsession, an account of efforts to remove President Donald Trump from office during his first term. His work has been published in the Wall Street Journal, The Atlantic, Foreign Affairs, and you made one mistake. It was the New York Post, and Byron has written there too, so I have to give them a shout out. He is a graduate of the University of Alabama and the University of Chicago. He is currently a spring 2026 resident fellow at the Harvard Kennedy School Institute of Politics. We are fortunate to have him here with us this evening, so please join me in giving a warm welcome to Byron York.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Hunter. Thank you, John Bruce. Thank you, Mark Zimmerman, and everyone here for inviting me to speak. Hunter picked me up at the airport today, and we got to talking about various political trivia, and he knew all the minutiae of the Clinton scandals of the 1990s. He knew about Hillary's cattle futures deal, and I thought, man, I had forgotten Hillary's cattle futures deal. So, big future, gotta say. Again, thanks for having me. And now, there are a number of free speech issues. First of all, I'm not a free speech scholar. I'm not a free speech expert. I am a free speech beneficiary. And I remember that every day. But one thing I wanted to say before I get into my remarks, which are going to be about President Trump, is that, first of all, congratulations to the group for really standing up to a number of ways in which free speech is threatened now. But from a journalistic perspective, I'm kind of Mr. Happy. I think there has never been a time in the history of the world that it's better to be a consumer of journalism and a follower of news. Most people get their news through television, or they get it through some sort of web-based video platform. And if you go back to, let's just pick a date, go back to 1975. There was none of the web stuff. Most places, like Raleigh, like many other mid-sized cities around the country, had 3 TV stations, ABC, CBS, NBC. Those 3 TV stations each had one 30-minute newscast at night. And the 30-minute newscast was produced by fairly small groups of men working in offices a few blocks away from each other in Midtown Manhattan. And those three groups of men in the offices in Midtown Manhattan all read the same three newspapers, the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the Wall Street Journal. And unless there was some sort of what we would call spot news, a fire or an explosion or something, they kind of illustrated the stories that were in the three newspapers. And that's what people found out as their news. It led to, I think, the American public just being unaware of so many things that they should have known, and things that they do know today. And in my view, the Dan Rather scandal, which was in 2004, just showed that those days that the internet had just exploded the old system. If you remember, CBS News ran a hit piece on President George W. Bush about his time in the Texas Air National Guard. And they said he had shirked his duty, and they had it all wrong with actually forged documents. So it was a standard television news piece. Here's Bush, here's an old picture of Bush, here's a picture of the airplane, and there was a screen with a few documents. You could see a few documents. You couldn't read them, it was on TV. And CBS suggested that these documents proved the case that Bush had shirked his duty with the Guard. And putting up a document like that, I used to work in television, is not a way, you don't want the viewer to actually read them, you just want them to see and think, wow, they've got the proof. Well, it turned out they didn't have the proof, and they were exposed by the internet, by people who watched this, started checking, found that the documents probably could not have been produced when CBS said they were produced in the 1970s. And Dan Rather claimed up and down that he was absolutely right, that CBS was totally right and stood by the story. And they ended up having a former Attorney General of the United States investigate the story for CBS and conclude that the documents were, in fact, forged. That could not have happened in 1975 with 3 newscasts and the guys in the office of Midtown Manhattan. So if you want now, and you have to be motivated, but if you want to find out what's going on in the news, there has never, ever, ever been a better time to do it than right now. So that's just my happy story about the news. It's what I benefit from every day, because I dig into all sorts of news stories that would have been impossible to look at 30, 40, 50 years ago. So I think we all ought to be actually quite thankful for that. Of course, there's fake news, there's all sorts of stuff you can't rely on, but in general, never been a better time. So I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about, and when you're a political reporter, like I am, there's really only one thing to talk about, and that's the President of the United States, who dominates our national conversation like no president ever has before. I think if you did one of those diagrams of my own brain, you would see the Trump portion would be really huge, and the rest, like sleeping and eating and locomotion, would be small over to the side. He has been dominating our politics now for 11 years, being the only story in politics. So there's many things you could talk about, but what I thought I would talk about now is, why has this Trump term, why has this presidency been different from the first time around? I mean, it's really a quite different term in office. So what accounts for this frenetic activity that we've seen for more than a year now? What accounts for the heightened sense of focus that we've seen? What accounts for the directedness that we've seen this time around that we did not see the first time around? Now, I have been fortunate enough to just hang around with him a good bit in behind-the-scenes informal settings, maybe to get an idea of what the answer is. Trump is, by the way, the most accessible president of the United States in history. No doubt about it. You can call him up and he will answer the phone, which is just an astonishing thing for a president of the United States. Talks to the press all of the time. If there's a horrible story and he's under attack by Democrats or somebody else, if there's a horrible story, he'll still come out and talk to the press every single day. Incredible, incredible accessibility. So anyway, as far as why is this time around different? First thing to say is that, for all of the controversies that happen every day with Trump, he's just better at being president than he was in 2017 when he started. And I mean, there are a lot of reasons for that, but you don't become president actually knowing how to do it. And he certainly didn't know how to do it in 2017. And when you do something over and over again, if you have any ability, you get better at it. Another thing is that a lot of people think that having 4 years away was a good thing for him. He got time to focus on how he would be president if he got the chance again. But one thing I wanted to talk about was I think the biggest reason that this is different is that Trump is a little bit different about whether he as a person has actually changed. Now, I have to say, in the past, I always thought that Trump was absolutely, totally, completely unchangeable. If you remember back in 2016, there were a lot of people who said, man, he is so good. He has so much political talent. If he could just smooth down some of those rough edges, maybe a few not so many terrible tweets, he would just win in a landslide. He'd just be great. And if it was always if Trump could just do a little less of this or change this, and it ain't gonna happen. You come to the idea that Trump just is who he is. Back then he was 70 years old. Now he's gonna be 80 in June, and he's not gonna change. Okay, but there did come an event that I think that really did bring a change in him. And I think it's responsible for the differences in the administrations. And what I'm talking about is the attempted assassination of him in July of 2024. Now, the Republican National Convention was going to start in Milwaukee on Monday, the 15th of July in 2024. Now, I was going to go to it. I really didn't want to go to it. It didn't promise to be very newsy. But I had this idea that it would be a good idea to ride on the plane with Trump, going to Milwaukee, and it's kind of this Roman sort of triumphant entry into Milwaukee with his giant airplane to accept his party's nomination. So I asked them this, and they said, yeah, you can come along. He'll be leaving from Newark on Sunday, day before the convention, Sunday, July 14th. So I'm going to catch a plane, go to Newark, get on his plane, go to Milwaukee. So the plan is to fly on Sunday on what they call Trump Force One. Now, you all know what happened on Saturday night. He was shot at a rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. So I think, well, he survived, that's great and everything, but that's kind of the end of that plan, not going to happen. So I called him early in the morning on Sunday, and they said, no, he's going, no change, not going to let an assassination attempt change anything, so we're going. Okay, so I go to Newark, and we get on the plane. And he arrives, he's got bandage on one ear, phone on the other ear. He's just going totally full speed. So when we sit down, he's kind of the old Trump, and he's talking about the vice presidential pick, which he has not announced at that time. And after talking to him a long time about that, I became convinced that he was going to name Doug Burgum as the vice president So I've continued my long tradition about being wrong about all vice presidential choices. If I ever tell you who's going to be the pick, it ain't going to be him. So we talked about that for a while. And then something changed. I mean, it was really odd. I mean, we were talking business, and I was thinking, 16 hours ago, he's shot. I mean, this is really amazing. And at some point, he stops, and he starts talking about the shooting. And at that point, he just did not stop. He just went on and on and on. He was clearly trying to process what had happened. He was, he was totally just astonished. He was stunned. Who wouldn't have been? And he was replaying it over and over in his mind. And you remember he was speaking, audiences out here. There was a big sign that he had up here. Shooter is over there. And he's talking and talking, and at one point he turns like this, and the bullet goes by and grazes his ear. So if he'd been turned this way, would have been right in his brain. And so he was talking about that in great detail. He said, if my head's here, it hits here. If my head's over here, it hits there. And he said, he kept saying, I'm not supposed to be here. I'm just not supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be dead. He went on and on. Now, the Trump plane, he has a place where he always sits. This is his, not Air Force One, his own plane, his 757. Has a living area and has a big TV over here. And of course, he keeps it to Fox News and other news stations when he's not watching music videos, which is a big hobby of his. So he keeps it. I'll tell you about music videos in a minute. The big screen is on the news, and it's playing over and over and over videos of him being shot. And he was sitting there watching the video over and over and over of himself being shot. He pulls up his sleeve. The Secret Service had really grabbed him, and so he was all bruised up where they grabbed him because they pushed him down on the ground. And he said, I kept telling him, I've got to get up, I've got to walk. I've seen things when somebody is carried out, and it's never good. And I got to get up and walk. And he wanted to return to his speech. He wanted to kind of get up and say, as I was saying, but then he found out that other people had been shot, and that this was just not a possibility. So we were talking, as we talked, and this went on for quite a while. And so he's talking about the shooting. And then we talk about whether it would cause him to change anything. And he does at the convention. And he said, yeah, it would. He was going to talk a lot more about unity, and we were all going to be together. Now, the spoiler alert is he did not do that. Some things are just not going to change in him, and that it did not change. But here's the thing, the unity stuff was just talk. But I think there was a way in which this shooting really did change him. It made him more determined. It made him more resolved to get things done and to get them quickly. And it made him realize that he did not have forever to get whatever he wanted to get done. And I do think that explains the incredible first year that he has had in office. I think it explains the war in Iran right now. I think it explains almost everything he has done in just rapid fire succession. I do not have scientific data to support it, but I do not think this year in office or his whole presidency would have been the same had he not been shot, and it would not have been as productive had we not seen what happened in Butler. It really made Trump very, very different. You would think a man approaching 80 would think that maybe he didn't have all the time in the world, but I think he thought that prior to the shooting, and now he doesn't. I'll just give you a little contrast in the way he used to be. Just kind of by coincidence, I had been actually on another plane ride with him just a month earlier. And my idea, I was going to go down to Mar-a-Lago and do a story about how he was preparing for his debate with Joe Biden, and the one that turned out so disastrously for Biden. And so we're having dinner, and he wants to talk about Biden, but all he wants to talk about is Biden's plastic surgery. He's not approaching any of this seriously. And he's going on, he says, just look at his eyes, look at his eyes. They're just round. He said they're just exactly like pennies. You know, they're not supposed to be that way. He's had terrible plastic surgery. And then he starts, he is a connoisseur of plastic surgery, by the way. Then he starts going on about a number of women in New York who he did not name. Some who had had really good plastic surgery and some who had had bad plastic surgery. And he went on in great length about the changes that occurred. And then he gets back to Biden, and it's more about the eyes. They're just like pennies. It's just bad. He says, I was shocked. Anyway, so that's his thing. So before I'd gotten there, and we talked about plastic surgery, they had made a change in plans. His team had made a change in plans. They said, well, we're going to have dinner at Mar-a-Lago, but he's going to get on the plane and go to his club in Sterling, Virginia, because he's going to meet with Republicans in Washington. You want to go? Well, sure. I'll cancel the Delta flight, and we'll just go this way. And so we're on the plane, and the plane ride is like a party. Now, he doesn't drink. Nobody drinks on the plane, so it's not like that kind of party. But he decided he wanted to watch music videos, and he absolutely loves music. At Mar-a-Lago, he has his table out on the terrace, and he has an iPad, and he scrolls through his iPad all the time, picking out songs to play. And he'll take requests, and he just does that. So on the same screen that he would be watching the videos of himself being shot, he decides to start off with a Guns N' Roses video. Does anybody know the song called November Rain by Guns N' Roses? I didn't either. It's news to me. It was a very lengthy kind of movie-style music video. And Trump was actually going through the whole thing, explaining the production values and the qualities of the actress who played the bride and the Guns N' Roses singer and just all of the qualities that he thought made this music video so great. Then he played the late singer Sinead O'Connor. She had this song called Nothing Compares to You, and Trump liked it so much that he's a YouTube addict. He played two different versions of the song. And then I was telling someone earlier tonight, James Brown and Luciano Pavarotti had made a duet, not well known. It's true. They did do it. You can look it up. And Brown had written a song called "It's a Man's World," and it is the most politically incorrect song ever written. So they do this duet, and Trump loves it. He just absolutely loves it. He's played it at a few rallies before. And he starts talking about knowing Pavarotti and knowing James Brown. And Trump bestowed the highest compliment he can bestow on any human being, which was, he was a wild man. So James Brown was a wild man. Luciano Pavarotti was a wild man. And the only other person I have ever heard Trump convey this honor on, he was a wild man, was Teddy Kennedy, his neighbor in Palm Beach. And Trump kind of admired all this. So anyway, in retrospect, this flying party, which occurred just a couple of weeks before the shooting, just seemed like a different world and a different Trump. And I don't think that he would be the same president today had that not happened. The way he came back I'd actually gone down for yet another story about just how he engineered his comeback, showed that he was really working very, very seriously on running again. And the day he started working on running again was January 20th, 2021, the day he left office. Flies down to Mar-a-Lago, has dinner with the family, and tells them he's going to run again. He used the White House, he used Mar-a-Lago. You know, a president has these two great assets. He has the White House, and he can invite people to it. It's really great. And he has this great, fantastic airplane, and he can, if they're really lucky, he can take them on the airplane. Well, Trump had Mar-a-Lago, which is really beautiful, and he had a really big airplane. He kind of approximated the perks of the presidency, and he invited all of these political figures, business figures, donors, everybody were coming in and out of Mar-a-Lago during the exile years, in which he was just kind of running a trial presidency for a second term. It was an astonishing operation. So I'm going to leave you one little last story. The way that he felt so confident that he could run again and that he could win again was that he said he felt a emotional attachment with his voters through his rallies. And he said he used his rallies as market research, and it saves him millions and millions of dollars. And we were talking about music again, and I don't know if you watched a lot of Trump rallies in 2016. I watched, or went to a bunch, went to all of them. He would finish, and his walk-off music was what I always thought was a very odd choice. It was a song by the Rolling Stones called "You Can't Always Get What You Want." So Trump ends, and he says, "And we'll make America great again." And then they start playing "You Can't Always Get What You Want." And then in the 24 campaign, they changed that to Sam and Dave's "Hold On, I'm Coming." And so we're talking about this. And he says, "Well, which one do you like?" I said, "Well, I can see your argument that "Hold On, I'm Coming" kind of fits the rescue theme of the 2024 Trump campaign. But, you know, "You Can't Always Get What You Want" was a great song. And he said, "Yeah, you're right." And so the next day, I'm going home. He goes to a rally in Dayton, Ohio. I watched the rally later. He spends a long time talking to the crowd about the relative merits of "You Can't Always Get What You Want" versus "Hold On, I'm Coming." And then he polls the crowd. Which one do you prefer? And Sam and Dave won, by the way, so he stuck with "Hold On, I'm Coming." But this is the way he said he kept up with his crowds, with his supporters about everything, and it's what made him confident that he could actually win again. And it was enough for him to do the most extraordinary thing that's ever been done in any of our lifetime in American politics. Only been done once before, winning non-consecutive terms in the White House. And it was enough for him to make history. And that's what I wanted to talk about Trump, just a few behind-the-scenes things with Trump. And I will take your questions about him or about anything else. And it doesn't even have to just be on politics. It could be about golf if you want. But anything else, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Please raise your hands if you have any questions. And Byron, do you want to call on people, or?
Well, let's see a raised hand, and I will. Here's one right here, over here.
Thank you. Byron, first, congratulations on educating people and interpreting the transition from the party before Trump, the coming of Trump, all the way up to now. I think in your business, that was not an easy thing to do. Many people did not successfully do that, and you did. So
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
The question is, do you have an explanation? Because I agree with what you said regarding the change in the president as a result of the assassination, but I think there was something before that, which we talked about earlier, and I just thought if you could expand on it. After he lost, and while they were trying to destroy his life
Yeah.
in every way possible, he obviously was doing serious policy work
Right.
and legal work to make sure all the executive orders were written properly. They knew they would get sued, they
Yeah.
wanted them to survive. He decided more than the outlines, a good part of his presidency that normally might be done in 3 years, he did it in 1. How do you explain, and do you have thoughts on what caused him to do that? Because all that was being done, maybe you knew about it, but to me it was sub rosa, not visible, but it clearly had been done. And I don't think many people talk about that or recognize that.
Well, no president since Grover Cleveland had had 4 years between terms. So, I mean, this was involuntary, but he had 4 years between terms. And since he decided, literally on the day he left his first term, to run again, I think he was determined to do it better this time around. Now, also, you have to remember, the first time around, Trump didn't know anybody. And personnel was the biggest problem of the first Trump White House. If Hillary Clinton had won, there would have been thousands of Democrats who had been the deputy undersecretary of something in the last Democratic administration who were ready to move up to be the undersecretary of something. And there were the guys from Long Island who made Make America Great Again yarmulkes. And there were just all of these like offbeat figures who were not going to be the undersecretary of this, you know? And so Trump, the personnel was just a nightmare. So this time it was much, much better because he'd obviously been president before. So, yeah. One back here. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you very much, Byron, for your thoughts tonight. 2 quick questions that are very different. One is, and you take this one second, what are your thoughts about the 2028 race? And then going back to Trump, as you mentioned, he's very accessible.
Yeah.
And I hear that when you kind of are in a one-on-one situation like Bill Maher might have been a year ago.
Yeah.
He actually is someone you kind of quote unquote want to have a beer with, even though he doesn't drink beer. Why do you think a lot of the mainstream press just continues to just have this vitriol against him? I heard, for example, Tom Friedman the other day, who I thought was somewhat balanced, clearly has an issue. I mean, he really denigrates the character of the president. And why do you think that still is the case when you actually sit down and talk to him and he's more reasonable?
Well, you'll hear people like that praise disruptors sometimes if they're in Silicon Valley. But Trump was the kind of disruptor who I think really threatened both parties. Because he ran kind of a third party race inside the Republican Party. So the Republicans didn't know what to do, and the Democrats were off balance a lot of the time. And now, why they got so hysterical and stayed so hysterical, I'm not sure I can really answer. I don't know if there are any medical professionals in the audience who might be able to help, but I actually don't know. But I do remember a friend of mine who worked for the American Enterprise Institute, the conservative, kind of mainstream conservative think tank in Washington, who said that, Trump just rolled a grenade into the AEI lunchroom. I mean, and on a lot of issues he did. And a lot of people felt very threatened about it. And, you saw him being denounced in 2015. I mean, on Fox News, there were a number of really distinguished commentators like Charles Krauthammer, Charles called him a rodeo clown. and kind of bemoaned the fact that Trump was just taking a lot of attention in the primary race when there were so many other good candidates. I think that Trump threatened a disruption that, in some cases maybe affected people's livelihood, but in others, people like Charles, I think it just offended their sense of how things should work. That's the only thing I can come up with. But it was so intense, and it's still that way. Just don't know. Oh, 28. Well, I'm not super hot on J.D. Vance at the moment, and I don't really know why, but history is part of it. It's extremely hard for a sitting vice president to be elected president. It's been tried 5 times since 1960, Nixon in 60 to succeed Dwight Eisenhower, Humphrey in 68 to succeed Johnson, Bush won in 88 to succeed Reagan, Al Gore in 2000 to succeed Clinton, and Kamala Harris in 24 to succeed Biden. So 5 times, 1 victory. That was H.W. Bush in 1988. Now, you can say yes, but Nixon waited 8 more years and ran again and won. He did. Biden had been vice president and waited 4 years and ran, and he did. So it's not totally impossible, but history is not good. As a matter of fact, a sitting vice president has won election to the presidency 1 time since the 1830s. 1830s. And that was Bush. So it's really hard. And back in the Clinton years, when Al Gore, who was on the failure list, wanted to be president, in 97 he was starting to work on his 2000 campaign, and Paul Gigot of the Wall Street Journal said that Al Gore is locked in the trunk of Bill Clinton's car. And that's what vice presidents are. And Gore didn't know that 1998 was coming. It was going to be a total nightmare, and it was going to destroy his chances of becoming president. But it did. And Gigot went on to say, if Clinton has a great term, then it'll be good for Gore. If he has a not so great term, it'll be bad for Gore. Well, it was a not so great term, and it was bad for Gore. So now I do think that J.D. Vance is locked in the trunk of Donald Trump's car, and that's a bumpy ride. So, you say, well, what about Marco Rubio? He's the Secretary of State. It's not like he can, claim independence. That's absolutely true. So I don't know what's going to happen. I was listening to Chris Christie the other night, and who, really, a former Trump friend turned big-time Trump enemy, who believes that it's not going to be any of these people because whoever it is going to have to wear every thing that Trump has ever said or done. That's certainly what Democrats hope to make this about, and I do believe the 2028 election is going to be about Trump. If he's in good health, this is going to be about him, because it can't not be about him. The Republican race will be about him, and he'll be there, and the one thing that Trump doesn't like to be is in second place or back behind the scenes. He wants to be out front, and the Democratic race will be about Trump. So I'm not really answering your question. I'm telling you why all the Republicans could lose, which could be what happens. Here's one right here. Yeah.
Good evening. In the last election, who were the top tier people in Trump's circle that helped him get elected? Decision makers, or did he make all the key decisions? And the second question is, does Trump have a golf handicap?
I've never played with him, but Brett Baer has played with him a few times. Says he's pretty good. Brett Baer's a good player, and he's 80 years old, so he's not hitting it 350 yards down the middle, but he's actually a pretty good player. And who helped him? Well, he had Susie Wiles, who was extremely helpful, and ran the campaign in a way. Yeah, it was interesting. Basically his two campaign managers in 16 was Kellyanne, Susie Wiles in 24. So he's done well with women campaign managers, and now she's been a very effective White House chief of staff. He had a guy named Chris LaCivita, who was basically Susie Wiles' sort of other half in running the campaign, which was pretty effective. And he had some pollsters who did excellent work for him, but mostly it was him. He is the campaign. Yeah, this one right here. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about the Iran war and how you feel like the United States has managed that war. You hear some people say the president doesn't know what he's doing, and then you have some people say, oh, it's been brilliant. How do you think it's been managed, and where do you think it'll end up?
Well, I was a little bit of a skeptic on starting the actual war, and for the reason being, Trump has always said, and I think this is absolutely correct, that Iran must not be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. But the world has kept Iran from having a nuclear weapon for a good while and can continue to do so, maybe without doing this whole decapitation of the government and everything else. I mean, Trump did some serious damage back in June with the bunker busters bombing the nuclear facilities. So wasn't sure that the whole war was necessary, but that's what he did. I agree. You hear things like they're absolutely crippled. It'll take them decades to come back, and you hear people who say, yeah, they haven't had a scratch. They're doing great. It's kind of crazy. I think when you talk about some of the adverse reactions that have occurred, like with the Strait of Hormuz, Trump thought about that. It's not like they didn't think about that. I do think that Trump loves generals. It's like the three people he loves are sports stars and billionaires and generals. And he has always had this kind of pattern. I mean, Trump is a mid-century man, I mean, if you go to dinner with him, he's going to serve the steak or the fish or lasagna. I mean, he's a mid-century man, and he loved the movie Patton, and he loves the concept of central casting. So when he sees a general who's like central casting, he just thinks they're absolutely great. And I think he may have, especially with the success in Venezuela and all the amazing stuff we did in Venezuela that is still classified, but what did Trump call it? The disruptor. It's like everything in the city stops, and the American troops come in and there's no light, there's no nothing, there's no power, nothing's running, and then we turn it back on after we're gone, So Trump, I think, I don't want to say it's overconfidence in the military because the military performed magnificently, but I think he came away with the idea that there was nothing they couldn't do, no matter how big, and Iran is a lot bigger. So I do worry about that. So it's one of these things that if this all works out well, it'll be great, and if it doesn't, I think I was telling somebody, there used to be something called Vietnam syndrome, and Americans didn't want to commit the military to things after the long-running disaster of Vietnam. Well, I've got Iraq syndrome a little bit, because you go over there, you decapitate a government, and all sorts of stuff can happen that you didn't think about, and it's bad. And you can't go over and create another government with this, 1,000-year-old Shia civilization that we don't understand. I mean, many things can go bad. If it goes well, it'll be great. But I think Trump considered some of the obvious dangers and decided to go on ahead because of this faith that he had in the military to be able to do things really, really quickly. Yeah, I see one right here. Yeah.
Wait, can you hear me? All right, there it is.
Yes.
Thank you for coming to talk tonight. I just had a question about one of Trump's recent Truth Social posts. I was wondering if you had any comments about him posting himself as Jesus on Truth Social.
A doctor. He's a doctor. He explained that he was a doctor. Kind of a healing doctor. You know, it was one of those things that I just didn't get too upset about. You know, the amazing thing about the Trump and the Pope thing, where Trump tells the Pope to stay in his lane, is I thought back to the South Carolina primary, and you can go back to the South Carolina primary of 2016. We're coming down to the end. Jeb Bush is fighting for his life. He would lose. And Trump gets into a spat with the Pope. At that time, it was Pope Francis. And I remember my mind just being blown. I just never thought of you know, if the Pope criticizes you, you don't actually have to hit back. But Trump has to hit back. There are people who believe that sometimes if you're attacked, it's really smarter just not to hit back. Trump never believes that. Never. So if he is attacked in any way, he's going to hit back. So that's what he did. And then as far as the Truth Social, all I can say is, you know, he started his own social network so he could post anything he wanted to. And this is what you get.
Byron?
Yeah.
Could you comment on Trump's relations with two of the other larger-than-life political figures in the world, Putin and Xi?
Well, he says he has good relations with Xi. He actually says he has good relations with both of them. He campaigned in 2024 saying that he would end the war in Ukraine almost immediately. I think he said it within 24 hours, I believe. Well, that hasn't worked. And, you know, he continues to believe, and I think for strategic reasons, that there should be a settlement of that war in a way that the Ukrainians found pretty unacceptable. So what we've seen lately is Ukrainians have been making a fair amount of progress. And the war, given everything else, the Ukrainian war, given everything else that happened, is kind of on the back burner. So the pressure to resolve it seems to have, in Washington at least, has disappeared a little bit. Now Xi, Trump always claims that he can do business with him, and there are critics who think that Xi is sort of eating Trump's lunch on various matters. But it's certainly true that with the tariffs, and Trump campaigned on tariffs. Nobody can be surprised that he imposed a bunch of tariffs because he said it was his favorite word in the whole world during the campaign. Some of his efforts was to rebalance the global trading system in a way that benefited the United States and to the detriment of China, and so far it has not done that. So what can you say? Yes, right here. Anybody got a... Right.
I can speak loudly.
Okay, well, you'll be next. Okay. The man with the microphone in his hand.
Yeah, maybe a delicate question, but you made a comment in response to 28 about if he's in good health.
Yeah.
We've all watched
the
realities of a president degrading in office,
right,
in Biden, and it seems from reporting that the people around him stepped up and kind of shepherded Biden through those last years in office. What does that look like if something happens to Trump?
Well, this is a great question. I'll say this because of this thing I've been doing at Harvard, I've shown my students a number of sound bites from Trump in 2015. We had Britt Hume with us as a guest, and I played the part of the Fox debate in 2015 in which Megyn Kelly just gives Trump a sledgehammer of a question about the way he's characterized women. And Trump ad-libs only Rosie O'Donnell. And immediately had the audience with him, and both in the room and out there in TV land. And listening to Trump in 2015, I have been trying to think, well, does he seem different? No, it's a decade later. And the answer is yeah. I think he's a little slower. I think he's a little slower. His speech is a little less clear than at that time. I don't think it's that unusual, somebody going from 70 to 80, but we're talking about the presidency, so that's a big deal. I think the age issue becomes an issue when it's just obvious to people. And that's what happened with Biden. It was just obvious to people, where he was just kind of addled and clearly senile. I mean, there were people who said he had dementia. I'm not a doctor. I don't know that stuff. But there used to be a word called senile, and he seemed that way to me. As far as Trump's concerned, I don't think he's anywhere near that. Could he be in 2 years? I don't know. You could, slow down more. So I'm not really sure where that's going to go. I know that I actually asked him about this. This was not his favorite question from me, but I went up to see him. This is between the presidencies, at his club, and had dinner at his club in New Jersey. And Trump's father died, I think, at age 93 of Alzheimer's. And so I said, when did you know that your father was really, succumbing and losing his faculties, his sharpness? And Trump said, oh, it was real late. It was really late, like 90. And so I said, wasn't it like 80? It's really late. It was about 90. And the reason you even ask about this, one asks about this, is that Trump's father's condition had been the subject of a lawsuit because he changed his will at some point late in his life. And the family members who were disadvantaged by the change in the will sued the family members who were advantaged, including Trump himself, by the change in the will. And so then that required discovery on, whether the father was really compos mentis when he made the change in the will. And so Trump has thought about this a lot. And I think he thinks that it might be coming, but it ain't here now. That's probably what he would say. Yes.
Thank you for being here. My question relates more towards the Press Act. I saw today that it was blocked in the Senate, but it was produced with bipartisan support. I was just interested to see what a lifelong journalist, political correspondent had to say about the Press Act, whether it was a positive or negative thing. So I think the reason why it was blocked was because of potential national security concerns.
No, I'm sorry. What the
Press Act?
The Press Act? What is the Press Act?
It was a bill that was introduced to help protect sources for journalists.
They've tried that over the many years, haven't they?
I believe that they have, yes. I was just interested to hear some more.
Does everybody know about the Press Act? Am I the only one? Okay, good. I'm kind of embarrassed to not.
Sorry.
No, it's quite all right, but there haven't been very many cases where journalists end up going to jail because of not. It happened in. They sent Judy Miller to jail. Oh, that was in Bush 2, over the Joe Wilson thing. That's right, over the Yellow Cake stuff. And I just don't think that there's any actual necessary protection involved there. So I mean, I suppose I would benefit from it, but I don't see it as necessary. We have one over here, and then one here. Okay, if you've got the microphone, then. Where is the microphone? Oh, okay, right over here.
Given our limited amount of time.
Hold on just a second.
Given our general limited amount of time in our lives and other things, but intense interest in what's going on around us and trying to be well informed, can you give us some guidelines, or how would you suggest consuming news that is reasonably accurate, helpful, and informs us so that we can be better citizens?
Beyond reading the Washington Examiner every day, from start to finish. Well, you know, it's funny because I asked some of my kids about this, like, how do you consume the news? And they all like used Apple News or some aggregator that I thought was terrible. And they're just getting a bunch of left-wing stuff. And these are the conservative ones, getting a bunch of left-wing stuff. What I do, I have an extremely conventional news diet. So it's basically the big papers plus Politico plus the conservative mags. But I also use Twitter. I've been a Twitter user since I think 2009, because you can curate your own news feed basically. And even with all the changes, it still works quite well. So I follow maybe 2,000 people or something like that. And you can, if there's something kind of big on the left that's bubbling up, I follow people that will tell me about that. And then I follow people on the right in case there's something big I haven't heard of. So generally what I do is I use conventional publications plus a Twitter feed that includes people further out on the fringes. Works for me. Yeah.
Non-Trump question. I appreciated your answer on Dan Rather and the internet and the change in the evening news. What has changed, and will it change back from investigative journalism at the Watergate and Bernstein and Woodward to 60 Minutes editing an answer in favor of a politician? Why have the press, which to a lot of degree I think is a public defender for us, changed their attitude towards investigative reporting?
Well, they're biased. I think that's probably the biggest reason. So the first one you mentioned was the Rather thing. And then, when Trump was first in office in 2017, he didn't go to the White House Correspondents' Dinner. And that was a big deal. And then it turned out he didn't go for all 4 years. Now he says he's going this time, which is, I think, on Saturday maybe. He says he's going, which I think is a crazy idea, but that's what he says. But anyway, so he didn't go. And I had gone pretty enthusiastically over the years and then kind of dropped off. And so I decided I needed to go to the one in 2017 without Trump, just to see what it was like. Maybe that was a story. And it was a story because the Correspondents' Dinner was totally based on the presence of the President of the United States. Didn't matter which one it was, but the President of the United States just lifted the whole thing up, and without him, it was nothing. So what they decided to do was they had Woodward and Bernstein as their special guests, and they would make it a celebration of the Constitution. And Woodward and Bernstein basically got up and told liberal bedtime stories. Tell us about the time you brought down the president. And it was kind of sad. But this was in 2017, and President Nixon resigned in 1974, and Woodward and Bernstein were still on stage in Washington, still telling war stories about what they had done. So I think that there's an intergenerational mindset in the press that investigative journalism is great if it's used against the right people. Yes. Finally got the microphone.
Byron, we could go on all night, but we can't do that, unfortunately. So I have one last question, then I'm going to come up and relieve you. The lawfare against Trump, you've written extensively about.
Yeah.
And some say that Trump's response has been to do reverse lawfare against his own adversaries. And others say that's wrong, that's two wrongs don't make a right. So what's your solution to the lawfare problem?
Well, I mean, the big problem with Trump's reverse lawfare is that some of the cases have just not been very good. I mean, they're just, the case against Comey just wasn't very good. The case against Letitia James, who deserves one, just wasn't very good. And so now you say, well, the cases against Trump weren't very good either. And that's actually true. And in my non-lawyer opinion, certainly the lawsuit, the Letitia James lawsuit in New York should have been thrown out. And the Alvin Bragg prosecution in New York never should have happened. And don't get me started on the E. Jean Carroll case as well. That should have been thrown out. But Trump's sort of instant response, his sledgehammer response, is to find some of these people and try to indict them. Well, you can't just do that. You need something. And so I thought that it was certainly the case of Letitia James and James Comey. It just wasn't very strong and just made him look bad. That's the answer. All right, well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
We want to thank Byron York for that wonderful presentation. I know we could go on questioning him all night. He's a walking encyclopedia. But as a token of our esteem, we have a nice gift for you.
Well, thank you very much.
And thank you very much.
Good to be here.
So that was fascinating. I'll try not to bring it down too much. I'm John Bruce. I'm the chair of the board of directors of UNCFSA. I just want to take a couple of minutes before we adjourn to talk about our organization. You've heard a lot about it already. I just want to remind you that we defend free speech, viewpoint diversity, and academic freedom at UNC. And we do that by putting on great programs like the one tonight. And we do that by interfacing with leaders at UNC on free speech issues. And we do that by being a watchdog on free speech rights and by advocating for viewpoint diversity. Byron joins a long list of distinguished speakers we have presented. Some of them have been on the screen here earlier. Jonathan Turley, Douglas Murray, Jonathan Haidt, Heather McDonald, Abigail Schreier, and others. The free speech environment at UNC is better than most of its peer institutions, and for that we're very grateful to the leadership of University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, some of whom are here tonight. And we try to interact with those people on a positive basis, to give them positive reinforcement for the great things they've done for the free speech environment at Carolina. But we saw just last week that we have to be ever vigilant about this. We saw a complete overreaction to some parody articles in the Daily Tar Heel and on another student organization website. And the administration really did some bullying of the students and threatened with them with an investigation. There may be some career fallout for those students. And our organization has spoken out forcefully in favor of the students' right to free speech, and we'll continue to follow up on that. Thankfully, the university has backed away from launching an investigation of these students who are just exercising their free speech rights in doing parodies for April Fool's Day. I invite you to subscribe to our website. Our name, UNC Alumni Free Speech Alliance, is a little cumbersome. Just remember UNCFSA, AFSA.org. So go to our website and subscribe if you have not done that. We will not fill up your inbox with requests for money, but we will send you interesting newsletters with the latest news on the free speech front, both at UNC and nationally, and about our upcoming programs. This is the last program of this academic year, but we're already working on a new batch of programs for next academic year in the fall and in the spring. Now, I said you wouldn't get emails for money, but right now I am going to ask you for money. We're a nonpartisan 501c3 organization. We exist totally because of the donations of generous people like you. I want to offer the heartfelt thanks of UNCFSA to the generous donors who have already given generously for this dinner. Now we want to give everybody a chance who hasn't given, or those who have given, to give more. On your table, there is for everybody a card, a little card where you can use it for several purposes. One is to give us a donation or to tell us you're going to give us a donation in the future, and we can follow up with you, or just write a comment. There's a space just to write a comment, something you liked about the program, something you like about our organization, or something you'd like us to do better. So I would like for everybody here to fill out that little card before they leave, and just make sure it gets in the big envelope at the center of your table, big manila envelope at the center of your table. And that would be a big help to us going forward. So, as I said, this is our last program for this academic year. We appreciate everyone coming. It was a great turnout and a great discussion, and we hope to see you next fall at our next event. Thank you. Good night.